Author and illustrator Kesenya shares a beautiful parable about trusting your heart and seeking your best self in her children's book, The Journey of the Tree. After her 10-year marriage ended, Kesenya was in a dark place and she channeled her feelings into her book. A triumphant story of surviving and thriving, The Journey of the Tree shows that if we want to succeed in change, it takes courage. A passionate believer in sustainable and green living, Kesenya's book is cleverly illustrated using fabrics, tree bark, household items, and a lot more, arranged into works of art. Jennifer Morris talks with Kesenya from her home in Australia.
So, Kesenya, how did you get the idea to write a children's book?
That's a great lead-off question. When my 10-year marriage ended, I was actually looking for a way to communicate what had happened to my children, but I wanted it to be done in a way that excluded any finger-pointing or bitterness, and just as gently as I could, in readiness for the day when my kids would ask me lots of questions about it. So look, I simply wrote an analogy, like an Aesopian-like fable, and with the hope that the children would be able to grasp the message out of it someday. But, as it turns out, the book it's a fable for children, but there seems to be a message that's resonating with adults at a deeper level as I go around talking about my book, yeah.
Can you give us a brief description, just for our listeners, so that they know what we're talking about the storyline?
Storyline. Well, it's about a tree, obviously. It's the journey of the tree.
Yes.
The tree's a beautiful apple tree, and she's living a very fruitful life in a gorgeous country orchard. And there she's spotted by a young farmer, and the farmer decides he wants this beautiful tree on his farm, so he arranges for her to be transplanted to his farm. So she leaves her home on the back of the truck and goes to live on the farm. But the new farm, the young farmer's home, is a very inhospitable and type farm, and she struggles to transition. And while this is going on, the farmer starts disengaging with her because she's not producing fruit like she once did, and he loses interest in having her on the farm. So she keeps on trying to produce fruit and shelter and shade for the farmer, which is all those things that she thinks the farmer wants. But finally, the neglect that she's getting causes her to reach a breaking point. And I won't go on too much more with what happens in the story.
We don't want to give it away. Right. Well, yeah. I read a quote from you where you said the book is an inspiration to stop being stranded in the jungle. Is this book an homage to your own journey?
Yes, it is. It's very, very much on my own journey. Like I said before, it's an allegory about the end of my 10-year relationship and a journey out of disengagement into courageous living, pretty much.
The stranded in the jungle quote, is that how you were feeling at the time, or?
Yeah, absolutely. It sums up all the emotions that I was feeling at the time and the end of my relationship as well. I was feeling very dark and very trapped, and I didn't actually realize that I had much of a choice. My religious background frowned a lot on divorce. I kind of gave up the hope of having any relationship happiness simply because I'd made a decision in my early 20s when I really didn't know much about life or love or relationships or anything. Brené Brown says in her book Daring Greatly that the most insidious betrayal of trust she's observed is the betrayal of disengagement in a relationship and choosing not to invest in the relationship. So, I was feeling very much alienated and unable to pinpoint what had gone wrong in my marriage. I felt it was kind of made me feel a bit crazy because there weren't any visible signs. And I just thought, maybe it's all in my head, and kept on trying to invest in the relationship, but not getting anything back. And that was particularly what left me feeling trapped and stranded emotionally.
So you're the tree.
I'm the tree. That's right.
You're the tree.
That's me. Yes.
Well, you not only wrote this book, but you also did the illustrations. How did you create them? Because I've never seen illustrations like this ever in a children's book.
Oh, wow. I'm so flattered. Thank you. Oh, look, it was so much fun. I have 3 children, and our whole house turned into a massive artist studio. They're mixed media collages, and we had ribbons and glue and fabric and beads and everything flying everywhere for a few weeks. It was
so fun. It was so fun to sit there with my kids, actually, and we talked about all of the art and, how do you think she did that? What does that look like? Can we do that? I mean, it's very inspiring. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you. Look, I'm a really keen sewer, so I had a massive stash of dress fabrics to use. But I also set myself the challenge of not buying anything that I didn't already have to go on the collages. So we only used what we had at home, which was, dress fabrics or bark from a local tree, and that was a wonderful challenge too.
That's a great
try
challenge.
And find a stash of beads or something. Yeah, it's good.
Well, speaking of using what you have, I know you're an advocate of sustainable living. Do you believe that by helping children understand the importance of taking care of our planet through stories such as yours, that perhaps there's hope for sustaining and maintaining our Earth and its resources moving forward?
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, I'm a passionate follower of the writings of a guy named Wendell Berry, and his voice is, I find, particularly inspiring. The old adage, where there's life, there's hope, still rings very true. I try to teach my kids to value life and the preciousness of our resources. So compelling stories like The Journey of the Tree certainly have a place in that. My little family, we're really blessed to live in the country, and we have access to organic foods and grow our own veggies, and we live in a house with solar electricity and hot water, all that sort of stuff. And it's a real joy for us to live that sort of life. It's very satisfying. It's not always easy, but it's a very satisfying road.
You work for what you have.
Yeah, exactly. That's it in a nutshell, Jennifer.
Kesenya, what is the moral of this story?
I think that if we want to succeed in anything, relationships or at work, or even putting a book like this out to the world, it takes a great deal of courage, but you'll never triumph unless you embrace courage, really.
Do you have any websites that you can promote?
KesenyaSpongeCake.blogspot.com.
And then you also have another vintage subculture blog, is that right?
Alice Jeans is the name of the blog. I've been writing it since 2009 and just came out of my passion for pop culture history. And I also participate in the vintage subculture here in Australia. But it's named Alice Jeans after my two grandmothers. And, you've plenty of articles about the simplicity and sustainability of a mid-20th century lifestyle, thrifting, baking, recycling old wares and that sort of thing. But there's a lot of fashion and art and music as well. So it's
That's
kind of
fantastic.
fun and gives me a lot of joy.
Well, it was a joy for me to talk to you, Kesenya. You're so lovely.
Thanks, Jennifer. It's been such a privilege. I feel very, very honoured to be able to talk to you today.
It's not that unusual when everything is beautiful. It's just an